Well, this morning I just want to puzzle through a couple of ideas, kind of thinking out loud, with absolutely no intention of offering any definitive answer on a rather perplexing subject. I am struck by how different generations make different life choices depending on whether they feel a primary responsibility to themselves or to others. For example, I have many opportunities as a pastoral counselor to affirm others in their pursuit of self-fulfillment. Sometimes the path to chasing one's dreams hit a snag when others may be negatively affected. And that includes people who you love very much. There are infinite variables to this dilemma, doing what one wants even when others may be adversely impacted. But when has a Unitarian minister ever advised against self-fulfillment? What do you love? Is the mantra for our times. Do what you love is the mainstay. You only go around once, the cliche reminds us, with a caveat that we owe it to ourselves to make it the best go-around we can. And we never think of it as a matter of self-indulgence, but it's virtually a duty that we must fulfill or an obligation that we have to ourselves. After all, it is my life, and there are certain things I need to do to make my life feel good, make my life feel right. I mean, I deserve that. And then I think my father never felt that way, or it was never on the table for him to even think like that. He worked 2 8-hour menial jobs for us to get by. In fact, I can't recall anyone from my father's generation who dared to do what they loved, which potentially could put the family at risk, either financially or emotionally. As a child growing up in the 50s, I don't recollect anyone living their passions. What the adults did instead, I remember, was cultivate a hobby. For some it was music, for some it was painting, others would do a little sculpting or a little woodworking, etc. No matter how much you despised your job, you always hung in there, mainly because others were counting on you. And those who did follow their passions were considered unusually egocentric, almost borderline freaky, if not bizarre. And above all else, these people were perceived as selfish. Rick Maston, a Unitarian minister, poet, and songwriter, about 20 years my senior, wrote a poem about being caught in this tangled mess. Should he do what he really wanted to do, which would have consequences for the family, or follow the script of what was expected and not rock the boat? And he writes a line in this poem which goes, "Damn you, Gauguin," a reference to the painter who followed what he loved and abandoned everyone and everything in order to pursue what he wanted to do. Rick was cursing Gauguin for being brazen enough to demonstrate that it was possible to free oneself of all obligation, pursue one's dreams, and even receive the rewards of success. But what a risk. Gauguin was a stockbroker, businessman in Paris, married a Danish woman with whom he had 5 children in 10 years. In the 11th year of their marriage, it all fell apart. And he just had this thing inside of him. He was driven, absolutely driven to paint. And he couldn't do that in the environment where he was in Europe, so he left for Tahiti in 1891. Left for Tahiti to escape all that conventional stuff that he was tied to in Europe. He never saw his family again. But he produced great art, fathered more children with young native women, and became sort of the poster child for just doing what you love doing. Since we only go around once in life, we need, or make it we deserve, to follow our passions. And it kind of makes sense in retrospect because he died at the age of 54. The underlying implication is that we can't afford to put life on hold. You know, we can't say, well, we'll get to our passions later on. We never know when our time is up. So do you ever wonder if you would live differently somehow if you knew well in advance what your lifespan was? This has always been an amazing curiosity among us mortals. I mean, not in a morbid sense, but wanting some inkling of when it was all going to end so that we would know best how to live our lives. It seems that knowing the number of our allotted years would determine some of our life choices. You know, and what comes to mind is, crossing a street downtown. The little green man is on, and so you kind of walk leisurely across the street. Or if you hit the corner and it says 20 seconds and you see it counting down, well, your gait goes a little faster. And oh my God, you're standing there and say, oh my God, I only got 3 seconds left. Hurry, hurry, I got to get it all done. I got to get to the other side of my life real fast before it all stops. Now, this penchant for wanting to know at what time in our lives the curtain is going to come down. I mean, this has been with us for a long time, and in fact, can be found in the 39th Psalm, where the psalmist asks for explicit information of when he is going to die, ostensibly so that he can live his life more wisely. Lord, let me know my end, he writes, and what is the measure of my days? Let me know how fleeting my life is. Mary Catherine Bateson, in her book Composing a Life, makes mention of all the ambiguity we face, including not knowing when our life meter will expire. But she writes, savor the vertigo of doing without answers. And she recommends learning the steps to life's dance, though she acknowledges that the choreography remains far from clear and certain. Still, most of us would argue, knowing if we were going to die next week or at the age of 103, we would, in all likelihood, choose different dance steps. But then there are those who just dance away, seize the moment, develop their own dance for their own sake, just independent of anyone else. How cool is that? Damn you, Gauguin. Just before he died in 1987, Joseph Campbell added a new word to our lexicon which gave validity to the concept of do what you love. And he honed the well-known phrase, follow your bliss. And he used this in dialogue with Bill Moyers in the program, The Power of Myth. Now, the phrase, follow your bliss, was undoubtedly misunderstood by many, but it really falls into a gray area of interpretation. Campbell claims he drew his inspiration from Sanskrit, the great spiritual language of the world. And Campbell said he meant it as a helpful guide, just a guide for the journey that each and every one of us walks through life. The contention purports that if you follow your bliss, you put yourself on a kind of track that has been there all the while, waiting for you. And so the life you ought to be living is the one that you are living. Wherever you are situated, if you are following your bliss, you're enjoying that refreshment, that life within you all the time. But the public seemed divided on this idea of simply working towards and developing the life that is already within you, saying that, it really sounds a little bit like a cover-up or some rationalization for being selfish, if not somewhat hedonistic. Take Gauguin. He pursued the life he felt he ought to be living, but, come on, there's work to be done, bills to be paid, matters of consequence to take care of. Now, those who defend following their bliss makes it clear that it is not a selfish enterprise, but a spiritual one. In fact, it's about rising above your petty wants and awakening to the divine. You move in harmony with your true self. But I always wanted to know, and wish Bill Moyers had asked on the air, if Campbell thought that having an affair with his good friend John Steinbeck's wife, Carol, was an example of following his bliss. Might there not be a little tinge of selfishness or hedonism in following one's bliss? But Bill Moyers, ever the gentleman, really allowed us to form our own interpretation of what it meant in having the divine spirit expressing itself so uniquely through ourselves. And whatever tryst happened between Joseph Campbell and Carol Steinbeck may have been proven blissful, but certainly had sweeping negative consequences for many.